How you doing? How you doing? And how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Petty, and I appreciate you stopping by today. And I would love to say that today we're doing our traditional first look video where I've played the first hour or so of the game, have edited that all into amazing footage, hopefully some funny footage for y'all. But yeah, we can't do that. A, because we're still using the loaner PC and we can't edit videos at all, so we having to do these all as one live shots. Also, I can't get this game to work on the emulators to save my life, so you're just gonna look at this pretty face today, and that's how we're gonna have to roll with things. But I have gone ahead and played about an hour and a half of the game on my own, so I'm gonna kind of go over my thoughts and feelings on it, and whether or not we have an honest recommendation for you guys. First thing I want to mention is before we played that hour and a half of it, and we spent a good 30-45 minutes just trying to get it to work in the first place. If you're one of those people that loves to go look at reviews for this game, go look at the 1-star reviews. So many people can't play this at all with little to no explanation, and I had the same issue that a lot of people had where it just wouldn't install at all. There's also another large group of people that would get it to install and then just fail on all of the downloads. And it's been a bit of a mess. Even some of the 4- and 5-star comments will be real honest and let you know that, yeah, they like how pretty the game is. Boy, there's some bugs. There's a few bugs. So even when the best reviews are telling you, like, it's got some issues, I want y'all to expect some issues. There's a few issues, to say the least. But outside of that, how's the actual game? How's the story? What are the elements that we're looking at? So we got your pretty standard gacha. It is the less than ideal type of gacha where there's also a whole weapon system that goes along with your characters, and those also come out of summoning pools. I'm personally not a very big fan of those because pools are already something that is relatively expensive. Free-to-plays have to grind forever to get them. And when you introduce a whole other system like weapons in these games, well, cool, now you're going to have half of the character pools that you potentially would have had. It just lessens the resources you're going to really get at the end of the day. Whether it be you only get half as many characters as you would have, or you have to, you know, maybe you get some good characters but crap weapons for them, so now you can't ignore the weapons. And I don't like what it does to the economy inside these games. I'm sure the developers love it to a degree. But I don't know. I find it a little distasteful when there's so many different things in a game that you have to essentially do draws for, or summons, or whatever you want to call them, pulls. Not a big fan of there being multiple different types of that in these games. These games already exist in an industry where there is a lot of predatory practices to try and push you guys to spend money where you shouldn't have to. So again, it just makes me, one of the poors, a little nervous when we see these kinds of things in there. But that, to my knowledge, isn't even a huge part of the game. Something I want to touch on, just real quick. You know how some games, try to be really good, mechanically focused games? Some games might try to be really silly or really cute games. And you'll get some games that are trying to be very artistic, and you can kind of always tell where the main focus is on games like that. And if you're not a fan of the latter, I don't know how much you're going to enjoy this game. It is very much on the scale of being artistic and that being a major focus over actual gameplay, in my opinion. And that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Now, if you're familiar with the Nier series, you know that its PC version, it had some interesting stuffs in it. It would almost like change game genres throughout. I had played maybe a few hours of it myself, watched a buddy play a good bit of it. They do some incredibly ambitious and interesting things, and it makes it for a very consistently refreshing game, and you can just feel the artistic depth in it, and it can be super, super impressive and really awe-inspiring, like just amazing stuff. I can see where they tried to go for some of that in here. Some of it doesn't translate very well. When you start the game, you're going to go through some weird, just 2D side scrolling. The only thing that you can do is walk. There is a skip button, so if you want to have zero part of that, go ahead. And doesn't honestly really make more sense when you actually play through the story, because it is confusing throughout, and the ghost says a lot of things like, but you already knew that, didn't you? Like, no, I have no idea what you're alluding to. This game has explained almost nothing so far, and it's like we just opened up the Depressing Tales storybook, and that's what we're reading out of. I don't know why we're here and why we're doing this. There's also a giant, like, Shadow of the Colossus sized building or fortress, or I think they call it the palace. This huge, insanely big, epic building. You want to know what you can do in it? Walk. Slowly. That's it. That's it. That's what they did with all that space, all that artistic power. You just walk through it until it takes you to another thing, which you then click on, and then you get to do some more walking in there. And then, if you're lucky, it'll be one of the ones that also has a fight in it. But the combat in this game is a pretty big letdown. If we kind of think back to what we were talking about, the previous Nier game that was on PC, I have no idea if it made it to consoles, but it was very impressive, and its game modes kind of varied in a natural kind of way, but in very, very big ways. So these people have a history of being really innovative and doing interesting things within that innovative space. And we got a walking simulator and then an auto battle system that doesn't feel like it has any depth at all. Your characters just auto attack whenever their bars fill up. They have skills that will slowly fill up, and then you get to use them once. There is almost no real introduction to the combat system, so it's very likely that there are parts of the combat system that I've missed entirely, because there was literally no explanation to almost any of it, which is insane. Like, the focus was 100% to just tell you some depressing ass stories and not actually be like, all right, here's our game, here's how things work, So you can move in the fights, but all of the enemies auto track to wherever you're standing. So if like, oh, they're leaping now, maybe if I run a bit. No, doesn't matter. They're still going to hit you. Does nothing in terms of affecting the combat in any real way, at least in any noticeable way, because I didn't see nothing happening. And it's a very lackluster and kind of boring auto turn-based combat that doesn't even really feel super turn-based. There are some nice things to like where if you wait until you're actually already up using your normal attacks, then you can hit your spell skill and you'll stay up there for a second and do your skill. But also if any of your other characters are trying to use a skill, it might not let you use the skill then. You might still end up running back while your other buddy does the skill. Then you get to do that skill that you selected 1.5 seconds ago. So I personally was expecting this to have some of those same elements, not just take place in the same Nier world that their games are in, but to have that same kind of sense of a really innovative and really interesting gameplay and story. And I personally just don't really feel and see that in, you know, my first hour and a half of playing. We did get a decent amount of summons and were able to do 30 pulls, which was cool. We got a couple of 4 stars. But again, it's a mix of characters and weapons, mostly weapons actually. So you Genshin stans are you'll feel at home. But I don't know. It all of the focus in all of this early game time is on the slow walking and slow storytelling and the kind of disjuncted way that they give it to you. it it's just having a hard time pulling myself in. And I'm not an anti-artistic game kind of person. Their other Nier game was pretty amazing, the things that I saw them just kind of flip between like they were doing nothing. Like, you just changed your whole game, now I'm learning all new mechanics. Okay, whatever. I like artistic stuff. I can appreciate that and the work that it did to get all of that stuff in place and made in the first place. I just don't... I don't feel like the artistic side does well enough to carry the other mediocre kind of parts of the game. And if the combat isn't really good and the character building just kind of feels a little flat, then what else am I doing here, dog? Just reading a storybook? Put it online. I'll watch it 15 times. We can do it that way. I'm not very sold, to say the least. So if you're one of those people that likes artistic stuff and that is more your shtick than like really hardcore in-depth game mechanics, then you'll very possibly really enjoy this game if your phone's able to play it, and if you don't have a whole bunch of things that make it crash, because that also is happening to a lot of people. Square Enix, you're a big company. You should probably had a little bit more stable of a launch, but launches are hard. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt there and keep driving. But if you're looking for something that is new being brought into the gacha genre, this one isn't it for me. There's really nothing in this in terms of game mechanics that I haven't seen elsewhere. And I don't have to do a bunch of slow walking or sitting through really just overly depressing stories. Like, I know that's become a popular narrative for games to have really heavy stuff like that in them. Like, oh, we're trying to send a message. Like, well, you're trying to be emotionally manipulative, telling yourself that it's for a good reason. And instead of having a story that combines all aspects of life together very nicely, you just made something that was supposed to fuck people's heads up. Okay? Where's the good, happy stuff? Where's the world building? Where's the character development? Where's any other of those parts that should be what consists of story? And you just got a depressive mess. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that. If it's part of a bigger story and there's some really down parts on it, that's fine. You can have a depressing part in your story, and that's no problem. There was happy, upbeat moments in Grave of the Fireflies. And then that movie got so sad that it took my depression up 2 levels for like a whole 3 weeks after watching that for the first time. Don't know if I recommend that movie either. But even there, like, it has a natural progression. This is kind of just sad and messed up for making you feel bad purposes. That's not good writing, in my opinion. That's just manipulative writing. And I don't think manipulative writing, even if you have a good reason for some of the stuff you're trying to get across with that manipulative writing, it's just still making manipulative writing. So it's just a little bit of beef that I have myself personally. But yeah, all in all, if you really like the characters and everything, check it out. I'm sure you'll have a little bit of a good time. I'm sure you might actually understand some things better than I was able to in the time that I spent in there. But for everybody else that isn't really sold on this property, I honestly can't say anything nice about this game that separates it from any other gacha that exists out there. Except for the fact that they're not really trying to do anything new or interesting like a lot of gachas are doing now. They're kind of just like, oh yeah, it's a gacha, so we threw some of that battling stuff in there, but do you want to go for a walk? No. But yeah, that's kind of it. I don't want this to come off as overly negative, but I also am trying to be very honest about some of the shortcomings I'm seeing here and the reasons why I think I'm not personally feeling it that hard. It's got a 4.2 on the rating system, so either it hasn't gotten flamed hard enough yet, or most people like it. I don't know. You guys might sit on a very different side of the fence than I do on this one, but feel like they could have worked harder on some aspects of this game. At this point, I feel like it's closer to some of those IPs that, or I should say, some of those games that will use an IP and hope that that hard carries them past some of their crappy game mechanics. And yeah, I just feel like you could have gone harder on some of the parts that are actually meant to keep people coming back through the game, because if it's really just heavy story focused, you might get some people that play through the entire story, but then what are they supposed to do? You need to give them something good to do after that. So we'll see. But first impression wise, I don't have a lot of confidence in this one, and again, the generic combat and everything just breaks my heart a little bit, because these people have such a history of doing interesting things that I was really hoping that's what we were going to get here, and it just doesn't really feel like it has that same interesting impact. And the walking's a little bit rough. I know we like to make jokes here, but just slowly walking for probably about an hour and 5 minutes of that first hour and a half was a little goofy. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've tried this one out, and if you have experience with the other Nier games. I'm definitely interested to know what your guys' thoughts and feelings are on this game. If your love of the IP is strong enough to keep you pushing on it, or if you're a little bit disappointed yourself. So, well, thank you guys so much for stopping by today. I really appreciate them faces. You're going to have to catch your boy on the next one, because we out of here. Deuces.